Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Hey, good morning, and welcome to this edition of Legacy Leaders. I'm your co-host, Chuck Gore, and joining me today is Greg Pirkle. He's an attorney at Phelps in Tupelo, Mississippi. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You're very welcome. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why did you decide to go to law school and go down that path?
Well, a lot of people don't know what they want to do by the time they get to high school. I have known that I was going to be a lawyer since I was in middle school. So,
Okay.
Seventh grade, they had, what do you want to do? And there was the law club, going to the courthouse, watching trials, and I was all up in that. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Also, I will tell you, I was a big fan of Perry Mason. I liked him getting the witnesses on the stand, and they just confessed right there. And it all went right. So I thought if I could be a part of that world, that would be something that I could do. So I really have never had the desire to do anything else since about junior high. So I knew I was going to go to law school. Didn't know exactly where, but ended up at Ole Miss. I'm from North Mississippi, and ended up going there. So it was a great choice for me.
Well, very good. Well, how did you, once you started practicing law, how did you get into the estate planning realm?
Yeah, so, as I said, I was going to be Perry Mason, so I wanted to be a litigator. So
Sure.
I think that's where everyone who goes to law school primarily wants to go. They want to be in the courtroom and fight with people on the witness stand. But I took a lot of tax classes and things like that. And so my tax professor said, well, why don't you go to tax school? You're doing well in these classes. You enjoy that. And so I said, well, because I'm a political science major, you don't go to tax school if you're political science. But she convinced me that was fine. So took some estate planning classes, went to NYU tax school. When I was up there, I mainly took some classes because of the reputation of the professors. One of the most renowned professors, Professor Maxwell, was teaching there, and he wrote the book on estate and trust planning. And then there was another younger professor. He's probably older now, of course, but he wrote the book on the trust and estates, the taxation of trust and estates. So I just got into my background. I took those classes not knowing I would end up in estate planning. Started in Tupelo, joined the firm, and wasn't doing a lot of estate planning, just basic wills and trusts. I was mainly doing ERISA, believe it or not, and a lot of tax exempt work. We represent a lot of hospitals and things like that. But as a sideline, the estate planning piece kept coming to me, and I kept doing that kind of thing, and was really interested in helping families and moving businesses and things like that. So I sort of developed into my estate planning practice coming out of an ERISA background and out of a tax exempt background.
Okay. Well, that's a great combination. You have the tax part,
It has really helped me. Yeah, it's really helped me because I do have done a lot of business transactions. I've done a lot of retirement transactions. I've done a lot of 501c3s. And that lends itself very well to estate planning. Most of my clients in estate planning have some need for a business or for land that they have, or they're charitably motivated. So all of that plays, and everybody has a retirement plan of some type. And the taxation of it is so different that I think that really plays well for one of my strengths.
Okay. Well, that's why I was eager to talk with you. One of the things, the tax angle, which a lot of, estate attorneys, they don't do that much. They just do the documents and hand them off and say, here you go, good luck.
That's right. One of the younger lawyers in my office, we were having dinner and we were after work one day, and he was asking me about, why do you know all these things about these plans and retirement plans that didn't have anything to do with estate planning? I said, because that was the first part of my life. Anytime you can do something like that, it's not wasted. It always can come back and help you in the future.
Okay. Well, so you obviously enjoy this part of your practice. So how did you get to this particular firm? Did you join here right out of law school?
No, not exactly. There was one pit stop that I made before. So I'm from North Mississippi. And so I was looking for firms, and there was one firm in Tupelo that did the practice that I wanted to do. And there was a particular attorney at that firm who was extremely well known. He did a good bit of estate planning, but also a lot of tax work and corporate work. He was not a tax lawyer, but he did a lot of tax work. So I joined them. That was in 1988. And this was around the time when you had a lot of mergers and acquisitions within law firms. Before that time, it was very rare to see a lawyer go from one firm to another firm. But this particular attorney was good friends with a lawyer group in Jackson, and they had just merged with or gone to Phelps Dunbar, and he was considering doing that as well. About 90% of my work was done with him. He went to Phelps Dunbar. He asked me to go with him after he moved, and I jumped on board, and I've been with Phelps Dunbar since, oh gosh, October of 1989. It's been I really enjoy the breadth of the firm as much as it allows me to specialize in this area. So that's one thing that I really like about it. I can develop a specialty, but also if one of my business clients calls and they want something to do with intellectual property, I will never do that and could never do that. But I have a partner that I can put them in contact with, and it's a great opportunity for me to provide services for all of my clients in almost every legal branch.
That's fantastic. A firm the size of Phelps and their reputation that anything that your clients might have, you can get them expertise.
Yes,
The
and I
best
don't have to
expertise.
vet, and I don't have to vet them. When the new lawyers come on, I got a whole law firm full of people vetting them to make sure that
Right.
they do their craft well. So I have no regrets of being a part of Phelps Dunbar for 35 or so years. It's been a great firm to me to practice with.
Well, very good. Well, I know we've talked about a lot in your different areas, but if you were to have one type of ideal client that you like working with the best, which is, I know, a very difficult question, but what would that particular client look like?
Well, their personalities matter a lot, but you
Sure.
know what? I have clients who are difficult to get along with, including some of my own family, and then I have some who are just incredible to work with. I'm very fortunate and blessed to be able to work with a lot of really good people. And most people, everyone's going to die, what, death and taxes, and I practice in both of those areas. So everyone could have a need to come and talk to me. But if I have to have an ideal client, I guess there are probably three things, and sometimes they coalesce into one client, but three things where I think I can add the most value, perhaps. One is going to be if you have an estate tax. If there's going to be a tax to your family when you die based on the federal estate tax system, then I can add a lot of value there. And there are not a lot of people in that world, so I think I can add value there. The second is a more recent development. I have a lot of clients who have land or wealth that they'd like to protect. They don't have an estate tax problem, but they do want to protect their assets in case they have long-term care. Nursing homes have become a great economic fear for a lot of my clients. And so that's probably the same prong. And then finally, completely unrelated to taxes or anything else, if you have a family business, that has been at the core of my practice. My entire career has been family business. And it's the most difficult, I'll say, to navigate through. How do you leave this business to your children, especially if you have one child who works in the business, who's involved in the business, and the other two are not? That family dynamic really is something that needs to be talked through, because if you don't, I have seen it on the other side, and the other side is not pretty. When you have a family business and one person works in it, it can actually destroy the business, but more devastatingly, it can destroy the family. So I do a lot of that as well. Those are sort of the three main types of clients that I add value to their estate plan.
With the family business issue, how soon do you start talking about that, with the client?
Anytime they come in, I start talking to them, because this is what I find. This is what I try to prevent in planning. If you have a family business owner come in, they may not have a child who's involved right at that moment, but often one of the children will become involved. I immediately say to them, don't give your children this company. don't give them stock in the company. There are better ways to do that. There are some things and methods that we can put in place to transfer this asset to your son or your daughter in ways that if you just give it to them outright, they can never achieve. So that's what I always start talking to them on the front end. Now, often they'll come to me on the back end. Sometimes they come to me when they're about ready to, they're not ready to die necessarily, but they're ready for that transition. And so they do come in and talk to me at that point. It's always better if they haven't transferred stock to the second generation, but they like to do that. Clients like to do that. They want to show the child that they're serious about it and that they want them to be involved. And so they'll just move 10% of their stock to the child. I'm going, I never, I never roll my eyes and I never say anything bad, but there is a better way. And that's why if I can catch them on the front end of their business development and try to say, okay, when this happens, and it might, be sure to call me before you start issuing stock certificates.
Right. I think that's very important. Yeah, the early education and talking to them and letting them know that there are options so they can make educated decisions. That's
Exactly.
what, it's ultimately your decision, Miss Client, but these are the
And they're
options that
looking,
you've got.
that's right. And they want those options and they don't know what the options are. And
Right.
most of the time, that's why they're coming to me. Now, and they might ask me, what would you do? And I'd never tell them on the front end, but when you talk through with them, you get to know the client and you get to know what their wishes are and their desires and what do they want for their family? What do they want for their business? And of course, what do they want for their other children? When you have a family and a business, it's equally important. They love all their children equally, and they certainly do not love the business more than they love all of their children. And the child who's involved in the business doesn't always get that,
Right.
because they understand that the business is going to fail if we don't do something. But that's why the dynamic is so challenging, maybe is not the right word, but you have to walk through that with the client and with their family and sometimes get the family in. I really do like to have the family in if I can. And most of the time we can actually result in having the family come together as a group. Not on the first meeting, maybe not on the second meeting, but ultimately we try to get the whole family involved.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very important. Get the family involved and let them. Well, we've touched on this earlier, with issues, that you're able to help with. Is there anything else that's common that you see out there?
Well, most of the common issues are the issue that I have. If I had just a base issue is people will come to me and they will have this form that they have filled out that they've gotten on the internet. And people ask me, what if somebody goes online and gets a form off the internet and fills it out? How do you feel about that? And I'm happy with that. I have made much more money correcting those things than I have ever made in trying. But the common issues that I'm finding often is that attorneys will set up a trust. And I would have to say that every case, every client that comes into me, a trust is what we would probably end up with because of the ability to manipulate them and to use them in numerous ways. But what I will also find is that there are people come in, they have this trust, it's in a great binder, it looks really good, but they haven't put anything in it. The whole purpose for an inter vivos or a living trust or a revocable trust at its core is to avoid probate so that the family has a lot of ease at their death. So, I mean, there are a lot of other reasons to have a trust, even a revocable living inter vivos trust. But at its core, it is to avoid probate. And if your lawyer has not actually transferred assets into the trust, then you may have well just have had a will. You can go in and change a will if you want to and things like that. But I run into that so many times with all my clients, business clients, anything else, where they have a beautiful system set up and it's not completely useless, but it is certainly not accomplishing what they intended to do when they went in and they paid the money to have a living trust set up.
Right. How do you kind of get them over the finish line, with that?
So what I do with my clients is when they come in, I have one staff member who is responsible for that, a paralegal who's responsible for transferring in. And of course, as a part of the intake with your client, you're getting all the information about their financial statement, what assets they have. And I give them a piece of paper that has, for every asset you have, this is what I need. And for your land, I need a deed, a copy of your recorded deed. For your retirement plans, I need the last statement. For your business, I need your operating agreement and your bylaws or bylaws. For your, even down to your checking account. I either need a deposit slip or a void check or something like that to give to me. Because for me to finish my job, for me to do what you're paying me to do, I need to have a document assigned to each one of those assets. And as a general rule, they bring that to me. If they don't, by the time we've signed it, if they get that information to me before they sign their trust, then I will have the transfer documents ready for them to sign at the execution meeting of the trust. If they don't, we will send 2 reminder letters saying, we really need to get this in.
Right.
The plan's not really good unless you do. You haven't accomplished all you've paid for unless you do. And then the 3rd letter, we will finally say, we don't want to bug our clients. I don't want them, I don't want to be obnoxious with them, but I do want them to know it's important to me to get their trust finished. So we send that to them, and we call that our shelf letter. If you don't,
That's a good term for it.
yes. If you don't want us to do this, we'll put it on the shelf and we'll stop bothering you with all of these letters we're trying to send you. So that's how I try to get everything moved into the trust.
I'm going to start
And
using that shelf letter.
yes, it is good. But that way, when they die and the family comes in and says, why in the world you charge them for this trust and you didn't have any, we're still having to go through probate.
Yeah.
I was like, they were wonderful people, but they just, for some reason, look at these letters, we reminded them, but they were too busy or something, whatever. Anyway,
Right.
it is nice to have in the file to at least tell the family you were trying to do what was right.
Right. I understand. And that happens. And people, they get started with something and they feel overwhelmed. And then
Right.
when that happens, they put it off. And
Yes.
and even
yes.
the best nudging, so
Sure. Absolutely.
all
Absolutely.
you can do is all you can do.
That's right. But it's our job as professionals just to make sure that we don't drop the ball, that it doesn't fall between the cracks because we didn't remind them or we didn't tell them that this is what we think you should do.
What are common misconceptions that you see around taxation and estates and trust and all that encompassing?
Right. I guess if I had to think of the most common misconception that people have of estate planning attorneys is that it's just a form. Well, why are you charging me this much money? Because all it is a form and you're populating it, you're putting our names in it, and that's all you're doing. So why does it cost this much money if all you're doing is using some standard form? So I get that and I understand it, but I always tell them, look, if you wanted me to start from scratch every time I was going to draft a trust, I would never have any clients. Nobody's going to pay me $30,000 to draft a trust, just a basic trust document. And that's what goes into it. The document has hundreds and hundreds of hours. I update it from time to time with things that I like or issues that I've gone through. But you have to have the bones and a structure. It's not in the paper that it's written on. It is the way in which the plan moves. It's the progress of the plan that goes through it. I'll even see my forms being used by attorneys who don't have anything to do with tax or anything to do with estate planning. And people say, well, doesn't that make you angry? It doesn't make me angry about the attorney. It's just that when I read the form, it almost never does what it's intended to do or what they were trying to do. So I think the misconception is that, and probably this is true of all lawyers, but I know it's true, especially attorneys who do business work and tax work and estate work, is y'all just have a set of forms and you're just charging me an outrageous amount of money to come in here and put this stuff together.
Right. I hear that all the time.
So there is value added when you come to your lawyer's office, and if you don't, I guess the good thing for the client is they will never know. They will go to their grave with the misconception that my document is just as good as anybody else because I filled in the form. It's their children who will pay the price. So it's sad because really estate planning is for your children. That's when you're coming in it shouldn't be how easy is it for you to fill it out. It should be how easy is it for your kids to work through this after your death.
Right. All right. Now these next 2 questions.
Okay.
I want you to tell me a story of how everything went right
Uh,
and then one where things did not go so right, and how people can learn from that and what they could have done differently.
right. Okay, I guess, and the one that I'm going to tell you about is the one I typically use when if I'm speaking to CLE groups and things like that, because it for a long time I made the largest fee in my entire career I made off this one case. There was a man who had a business, a wife and two children, and one child he wanted to have his assets when his wife died, and the other he wanted to disinherit. He died. I didn't see him before he died, and his widow brought to me a holographic will that he had put together and had plenty of money to hire an attorney, but it was a holographic will that he had written, and he was trying to do a marital trust. He was trying to disinherit a child, and to explain to the world what he wanted, there was a local newspaper editor who had written an article on marital trust. He cut that article out of the paper and stapled it to his holographic will so that the world would know sort of what he was doing.
This is
There,
what I want to do.
yes, that's people ask me, when should I have a holographic will? And my answer is, if you're in a plane and it's going down and you don't have another will, pull out a piece of paper and start scratching. That's about the only time I can think when that is better than having nothing. Needless to say, nothing was working out. The son who was disinherited immediately got a lawyer. We spent
Sure.
probably 5 to 7 years in litigation with that. Lack of planning may give you a sense of satisfaction, but it will put your family in absolute turmoil.
Sure.
And it will make the lawyers rich. In that case,
Mhm.
it's right. Nobody wins but the lawyers. When you do that, the lawyers are the only ones that win because it can be there will be substantial legal fees. And it's not just me, it's my litigation partners.
Mhm.
And everybody had to have a lawyer. Everybody had one, and the
Mhm.
costs were astronomical. And it really didn't work out the way that the man had wanted it to.
Right. And it could have been a lot better.
That's right. So let me tell you my best. You had said, okay, what is the time where it went
Right.
wrong?
That was the bad one. Let's hear a good one.
That was the bad one. No planning is bad, bad, bad.
Good.
The one that was the best one I think that I've ever had, husband and wife came into me and we did their trust, and they had a daughter. We did a revocable trust. They may have had an irrevocable trust. They had an irrevocable trust, but came in, we got everything set up, and it was a few years later they died, as of course we all will at some point in time. The daughter called, set up the after appointment meeting, came in, and she was so nervous. She was an only child. Both of her parents were now gone, and she had no clue of what to do and was very, very nervous of what to do. She came into my office. We sat down at the table in the conference room, looked through. I, of course, pulled her file before she came in, her parents' file, and there was nothing we had to do. We could have shredded the will, and I always tell my clients, I want a will, and I hope your children shred them. But being a lawyer, I'm always hesitant to shred anything that has an original signature on it. But we could just as easily have shredded it because we didn't need it. We didn't have to change accounts. All we had to do was call the bank, and they put her name on all the accounts, and called the broker, and the broker substituted her name as the trustee. And there was nothing for her to do. It was the easiest transition I've ever been through in my life. The other, and that was satisfaction because that's what you want for your family after you die. Your real goal is make this easy for my family. And that was one meeting, and she didn't have to come back. Now I've seen her, socially and things like that, but she has not had to come back to my office to take care of her parents' estate. I guess the other thing that gives me where it has gone right is, estate taxes can be so devastating, and there's such large amounts to a family. The other thing is when I can get the family, and this has happened many times, but I'm trying to pick the one that where it's gone right most of the time, is when we finish, we have looked at the tax, what is the tax going to be? And do we even need to file a state tax return? Because if it's under the limitation, we don't have to. Now, if it's deductions bring you under the limit, you do have to file. But if you've gotten the estate below the unified credit, then you don't even have to file a return. So that is my absolute goal. And that's what I love to see. That's when it works, is when my clients come in, they have a tax problem. We work through the issues. They die, their family comes in, and we don't even have to file a return. In fact, I will tell you one that just happened to me last year. We estimated that we hadn't done enough. We estimated that the assets had grown faster than we had planned to get them out. So we filed the return in 9 months. We made the estimated tax payment. And then we got, after the CPA had finished compiling the return, we didn't owe anything. So they got a refund of all the estimated tax that they had paid to the IRS. So that's when it works. Those are the things that I really like to see for my families.
That's outstanding. What are some of the challenges you face?
I guess one of the challenges I see is a lot of people, they don't think they need it. They don't think they need the planning in time to do effective work. If families will come in, you'll talk through them, they'll have a business that's either just started. Usually it's not just started, but it'll be in the process, it's becoming successful. And you talk through them and they say, okay, well, I'm just going to wait. Or they think they have time to get assets, started transferring assets or putting them into the trusts. And then they come in 10, 15 years later, and now their business has grown substantially, where I could have saved all the taxes if we had done the planning the 15 years ago when they came in to see me. Now I can't. There's no way.
Right.
Their life expectancy isn't long enough for me to get rid of the tax. Also, people coming in and they want to do something. They're afraid to lose this family farm, but they don't want to go in and spend the money or do the work that has to be done to move these 700 acres out of their name. And then they come in and they have they have a terminal illness, and they're coming in and they know they're going to need a lot of care, a lot of long-term care. And they come in for me to try to protect it at that point when they could have done it earlier, and it's just too late. So I think that's the biggest challenge that I have in my practice, is to get people to do it. Now, here's what bothers me about that. Often it comes across as if I'm trying to sell them a product. It comes across as, okay, I'm a lawyer. This is how I make my living, is getting fees off you. So you really need to do this thing so I can get this fee. And that's not what I want. That is really not what I want this to come across as. I want it to be work for them. I don't want to see their faces when they're sitting across from me and I tell them the tax that they're going to have to pay, and I can see their face become ashen and their jaw drop. We could have saved that. And I don't want to tell them you're just going to have to sell the farm because you're going to have to come up with the $12,000, $15,000 a month you need, and there's no time. You can't just give it away at the time you need the long-term care. So that's the biggest challenge, is convincing people that this is something they need to do without appearing to be the salesman trying to get them to give me a fee.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that, because that is difficult. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that, my clients are the same way. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's true of all of us in the financial planning world, the tax world, the estate planning world. When you're in that business, you know what your other clients have done, and it's given them immense satisfaction. But this client you're talking to doesn't know that. They don't know. This is untried territory for them. So you're trying to convince them that this can be okay, but they just see us as people who are trying to get that fee, make that money.
Right.
And we make money. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do this. That's sort of
exactly. That's what I have to tell them. Like, everybody, I got a mortgage, I got a staff, I got office building, every advisor gets paid the same way.
That's right.
So
my daughter just got married a month ago, and believe me, if I had not been saving up my whole life.
Marriage planner, they don't work for free. The video,
right.
they try, so
That's
I understand that.
That was, but once they do get in, and then they come back later and they want to continue doing more, that's when you get the real satisfaction, because then they know the benefit to their family. If I can get them to the point where they see how this, as a team, we have now done something and their family is a lot better off, then they're trusting me more, because then it is, okay, whatever he's doing, the bottom line is it helps my family.
Well, you just answered my next question. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you like best? And I think that's when your clients listen to you and do what, is in their best interest, and follow it through. That's, yeah.
When a client leaves, they typically, when they're standing up, and I really enjoy my client meetings. It's about 2 hours. If you come to my office, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours every time.
Sure.
People think it's going to be 10 minutes, 30 minutes, but you can't delve into someone's life and find out what they're truly looking for in 10 minutes. So when we leave, I always say, this is the best part of my job. This is what I enjoy more than anything else, meeting with a client, working out what they're going to do with their business, working out how they're going to save their taxes, coming out, and they almost always have a sense of relief when they leave. And that is what I'm looking for. How do I provide relief to my clients who are struggling through this issue?
I couldn't have said it better myself. When you can see the stress leave their body,
Right.
and that's a great feeling. And then you get a big bear hug from it.
It is. It is. And then they say, are you a lawyer or a psychologist or a psychiatrist? It takes a little bit of both. I don't have the degree for the psychology, but the same.
Well, you are partly a psychologist, so
right. Exactly.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to add? I've kind of asked everything that I would like to ask.
No, I think I just encourage people to take that look. If you don't have something in place, or if you haven't have it updated, at least occasionally go in, have a checkup. Sure. I mean, you wouldn't go without going to see your doctor, without going to see your dentist. So also, and you're always talking to your CPA and your broker, just make sure your documents are doing what you want them to do. And don't be afraid to take that step. Your family really needs you to do it. Otherwise, you could end up where my guy was with his holographic will and his newspaper article stapled to it. Well, right. I don't want to see any more of those. That's a goal.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, tell everybody where they can find you and how to get in touch with you.
Sure. If you're looking online, if you want to email me, it's Greg, Greg, Pirkle, my last name, Pirkle, at Phelps.com. Or if you need to talk to me, call me, set up an appointment. That's 662-842-7907. If you ask for Greg Pirkle, you will go directly to my assistant, and she has control of my calendar. I don't even have control of my calendar. My assistant does have, and she's really
well,
good.
I can vouch for her. She's fantastic. She's fantastic.
I appreciate you saying those, but those are the two best ways to get in touch with me, is either through email or call in the office, and she can get us together if that's what you'd like to do.
Well, very good. Well, Greg, thanks for joining us today. This has been eye-opening and very good information. It's very important. So I appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Glad to do it. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.